We're now going to invite up to the stage Georgia Walton from Chimeris Group. Her chat's going to be about what do we do now, succession planning for every day. Georgia is the principal and owner of Chimeris Group, a heritage management company and disaster preparedness specialist. Please welcome Georgia up to the stage.
Alrighty, let me get myself situated. Hi everyone. Okay, as has just been said, I run a consulting company that is geared towards heritage management, planning and disaster preparedness. It's a bit more niche than I would love. Basically, it's about helping heritage owners, workers, anyone in the industry and glamour as well, really get to grips with what could happen, how they can react to it, what they can do, and yeah, it's basically just trying to help us be more resilient going forward. So, alrighty, that's me. I'm also a HSA WA board member, and if you don't know who they are, you should have a look, because they're amazing and they're doing some amazing things to do with heritage skills and the perpetuation of heritage skills into the future. Okay, so I'm hoping that this somewhat dry topic to some people isn't going to bore you all to death, but I find it really interesting how we can plan forward and how we can make sure that we're really gearing ourselves for success. So I'm not the expert. I'm a person who has realised that people are not talking about this as much. I've actually heard it more today than I have in a long time. Succession planning has actually been spoken about a lot more today than I would have guessed, which was really, really heartening. So our prior speakers have actually talked about that there's a growing group of younger volunteers ready to get started with our organisations, but when you have them, what do you do next? How do you impart those skills that you've spent your career building, that knowledge that you have in your head that is really sometimes quite hard to extract? It's the simplest way to do that is through succession planning. So, what is succession planning? And why are we doing it? Our heritage is only getting older. Our industry lives in a state of attrition. We are either without skills, without knowledge, without money, without time. It's always something. We're losing our volunteers, we're losing our incredibly skilled and knowledgeable people through various sources, either through contracts ending or, let's say, retirement. There are a few other ways that we lose people as well. And there's also an inability to utilise and find our volunteers as well. So like we're losing out on staff and then we're not being able to bring people in as much as the two speakers before have said they have tapped in, which is amazing. In the corporate world, the definition of succession planning is very, very dry and generally related to HR. It's about implementing expertise going forward and streamlining expertise pipelines. Lots of lovely jargon. But for us, like in the HR world and in the succession planning world, I would find that the jargon is just very dry and sometimes a bit boring. And that's not what we're about. In heritage succession planning, I will define as one word: legacy. Let me explain. If you haven't been told lately, you're all superstars. You're all working in this industry that is slightly beating us down a little bit. We're working an uphill battle most of the time, and we're struggling to deal with all of the things that we have to do whilst trying to, let's say, nail down all the tent pegs as we're running through a storm. Like, everything just keeps on pulling out and we're just trying to keep going. And so you're all these stalwarts against this industry that's been hemorrhaging people and hemorrhaging knowledge for years. So I want you to sit with that. You're doing an amazing job. And anything that I say up here is not meant to add to your workload. It's meant to hopefully improve it, maybe add to it a little, but hopefully not in a bad way. So, I'm going to use a lot of metaphor and analogy, just because it's an easy way to process the information that I'm going to give. Let's just say you've been in the industry for a little while, or even a short time, but you've been working a little hard out. And I guess with very little support, or possibly some support, but not a lot of resources. And I'm sure you don't want that hard work to go to waste. You know your heritage place, inside out. You know the history, the stories, all the ins and outs, the eccentricities of certain doors that don't close properly, and something over here that has always been a little bit janky, but you've just sort of like done what you could. But you know why it happened, and you know the history behind it, and actually the story behind why that is a little bit off kilter is actually a really interesting one and speaks to the history of the place itself. But you know it. The person next to you, they don't, because you were there when it happened. So, you may also know that before a big storm, you have to do certain things to make sure that your heritage place is well cared for. You know that the plumbing makes a noise on every Tuesday in the second month of the year, and you know why. It's because there's a huge event that's held 2 doors down and something's all connected. But you know it's nothing to worry about, and it's something that you don't need to spend your time on. But a person standing in your shoes, let's say, a few years later, may not, and may spend their time trying to figure out what is exactly going on with that weird noise on that one day of the year. So we want to protect that work. We want to protect what you have learnt and what your knowledge is. And also, we want to be able to take breaks from time to time, because a lot of the time our knowledge is so integral to a place that we don't feel that we have the ability to walk away even for a small amount of time. So it's important that we have the ability to have a holiday and possibly retire if we want to. It's up to you, really. And that's why succession planning is a matter of legacy. So we're going to break it down about how we might write a succession plan. There's four things that we're going to do, but I will get to that in a minute. We're going to talk about in the next 20 minutes how to make a succession plan, what things it may include, some things for you to think about, and hopefully some tools to get you started, and maybe some people to help you find your way. I'm going to ask, who here makes lists? Yep. Does anyone meal prep? No? Does anyone make a shopping list? Yep. How about gardening? Does anyone garden? Yeah. That's succession planning. Job done. I'm out of here. In all seriousness, though, it's not far from the truth. What I've described above is sort of at odds with the succession planning definition in other industries. I'm introducing and hoping to introduce you what succession planning is at its core. Succession planning is simply planning for success, Funny that. It's planning for the future, immediate or far off. It is making sure that whatever you are doing, you are set up to succeed going forward. This can be as simple or as complex as you need it to be, which is why I asked the questions about making a list of, because that's succession planning. You are listing out what you need to do, what you need to buy, and to, like, let's say, make something that you're planning on doing or putting something into the garden. You have made that list, planned out what you need to do, planned out how you might go about it, and then you will undertake that. You're anticipating your future needs, all of which is succession planning. Now, I've mentioned gardening, and I want to fix on that one for a bit. It's an analogy that I find really is the best for how I want you to possibly go about succession planning. So the slides that I'm putting up, they may relate to what you will hopefully get out of here with, like the knowledge that I will impart, but they also may make alarm bells go off in your head a little bit, and that's not the plan. So don't panic and don't think too hard about the screen just yet. We're going to get back to that. What I want you to do right now is think about a garden. You have just acquired a new garden. It's a patch of dirt that you could do anything that you want to do. You can leave it fallow, if that's what you wish, or you can make it all full of vegetables, fruits, plants that will help your future life. The garden is big enough that you could potentially feed yourself and a group of people if you wish to, all throughout the year, but you know it's going to take work. So what would you do next? You could make a plan or a list. That plan could be as simple as a little list of your wants for that garden, or it could be as complex as a rotational, multi-step tabbed document that has everything covering all of your seasonal planting, plus, let's say, a 5 to 10 year plan with all the details of every plant and how you are actually going to use those plants, and maybe, a few recipes in there as well. But we might be getting ahead of ourselves. This plan should be something that will help you move forward with your space, and it really can be as simple as you need it to be. Oh. I've skipped a whole heap. Oh dear, okay. That doesn't matter. Okay, they will not represent what I'm trying to say, but that's okay. In our succession plan that I want you to think about, and in our succession plans that we might take home and start, we're going to begin with 4 parts. Those 4 parts are identifying your needs, securing what you know and what you have, preserving your process, and planning for the future. So we're going to start by identifying our needs. What are the needs of our heritage place? What are our assets? Who do we have on staff? What are their skills? What resources are available to us? What's our budget? What do we have to offer? Do we have processes that are written down? Do we know what to do when things go wrong? Is the team or site prepared when you are not available? Just like in the garden, we are identifying what seeds we have, what tools we might need, how many people we might need to help us, what knowledge we need to gain, what knowledge we already have. And that immediately you can start to look at how you can move forward in that space. And it's by planning, forgetting what you need, that you will be able to undertake that. So by identifying what you need, you already have started the process of figuring out what you don't have, what you're going to get, what you need to get, and what you need to know. So by doing that process of identifying our needs, you are going to need to possibly write everything down. And then we're going to communicate it. And I'm going to say this a lot. Writing things down and communicating them are going to be said a lot, and there's basically the things that you can do. Obviously, this is not including oral tradition. This is within industries and places that are utilising written structures, processes, and policies. But it is not excluding them either. We would just do it a bit differently. So step 2 is securing what you know and have. It seems simple, but it's easier said than done. If you think about everything that you do in a day, it's kind of overwhelming. If you think about it as you do it and write it down as you finish a task, it gets a bit simpler. If you think about everyone that you might speak to and what you talked about, you write all of that down too. And then I want you to hand those documents that you've compiled, those lists of things that you've done that day, to someone else and see if they can make any sense of them. The reason why I want you to hand them to someone else is there's a very common adage of there's nothing common about common sense. And what I mean by this is you may not be aware of the limits of someone's knowledge, but you also may not be aware of the specialist knowledge that you actually hold in your head. Your knowledge and experience are unique, and I really do want to preface that. It is. Your experience, how you've come to that place, will actually dictate how you deal with situations. So understanding that as well is really important. But if we're recording all of that, we're actually undertaking a corporate knowledge word of knowledge capture. During knowledge capture, you're going to come across your processes, and that's step 3. Preserve your processes. In a garden, this is simply recording that you always have to water in a new plant, or that you plant and prune at certain times of the year, that you don't plant certain plants next to each other and you must plant other plants next to each other. But all of that knowledge may be implied. So it's important for you to write that down, communicate it with someone else, because that knowledge that you have in your head of what not to do is not necessarily a universal bit of knowledge. So we need to pass on our processes. So you will have a lot of documents, I presume. Some organisations will have a lot of documents. And I'm not ceding or superseding these documents. I want them to be working in conjunction with those documents. So some of them may be included, some of them may not. And those documents are actually going to be exceedingly important to your succession plan, because they're how you undertake your processes, how you undertake your day-to-day within, let's say, a museum or a heritage organisation. You know how you turn on the lights every day. You know how you deal with an emergency. All of those need to be shoved into your succession plan folder, document, file on a computer, and then all of that needs to be communicated. Step 4 is that we have got all of that knowledge down. We've been undertaking it, we've been writing it down, we've been communicating it, we've been having conversations. And we now need to create a plan for the future. Having something written down and communicating it is amazing. But if no one knows where it is, or why you're doing it. It may be that it gets lost in the miasma of every single day at work. So we need to make sure that everyone knows why we're doing it and everyone's on board, and even if they're not bored, they do know where the file is and can access it, so that if something does happen, you can go, oh, hey, all of the information that you need is just here. So, step 4 is creating a plan for the future, creating a plan on how that information is going to be disseminated, how the succession plan that you have run with is going to basically be given to your people. So in the heritage industry, and undertaking, as a person undertaking succession planning, you really need to remember 4 things, which is identifying your needs, securing what you know and have, preserving your process, and plan for the future. And really, at the heart of that, all you need to do is communicate and write things down. In doing that, you are going to be securing a legacy of all of your hard work, even if you're not there to see what that comes to. I have a plethora of information about this, and I also have a lot of activities that you can undertake and references, but if you ever get stuck, there's so much information online. I went a bit slower than I thought I was, which is amazing for me, because usually I talk very fast, so I didn't get time for everything, which is interesting. But I haven't done one of these in person for a while, so thank you all for struggling through with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If you don't mind remaining up on stage, we'll now open things up to question and answer. So I want to, as I check the computer for any online questions, and just again a reminder to anyone who's joining us in the virtual presentation that you can put your questions in online, and we'll ask them on your behalf. But to get started here, does anyone have any questions from the floor? Got one in the back corner, just over here.
Hi. What would you suggest, what kind of strategies would you use when you have someone who's been with the organisation for a long time and enjoys owning the knowledge that they have and feels very threatened by the idea of handing it over to the next generation?
Yep, okay. So this is something that is a lot more common than we would love it to be, but I think speaking to their ego is probably the best way to approach it, and then possibly if you have, their knowledge is important, but it's only important when they have the ability to communicate it. If they don't have the ability to communicate it anymore because they are no longer with us or unable to impart that information for whatever reason, it's defunct. It's not important anymore because it's gone. And I think that's why, if I'm getting the question correct, or the line of the question correct, speaking to their ego of that importance, of that legacy, of that knowledge is possibly an easy way of, not an easy way because it's not going to be easy, it's never easy, a way of possibly getting in with that human to start discussions, especially emphasising how important it is that they tell us their stories, because otherwise they are gone. And sometimes that thunderclap of, it's finite, is helpful in some ways. It usually can light a fire under people and they're like, oh, I need to write a book. And I'm like, excellent. Or oral history, great, let's start that. So it's sometimes yeah, there's only so much time. So is that the vibe? But it's talking to the individual person and trying to, with your knowledge of that human, speak to how they may respond in a positive way, which won't be an easy process and may be a more long-winded process that takes a little while. But yeah, it's only as good as communication, really. Hopefully that answers that one.
Thank you for that. Any other questions coming from the floor? I'm just refreshing my online thing here, just one at the back.
I think that person over there was describing me. With a certain organisation, I've gone through that process. I constantly put my hand up and say, here it is, who's going to take it on? As the next part of succession planning, where do they come from?
Okay, so it's a collaborative effort always, and it should be. It's a lot of the time we tend to silo things a little bit, and we tend to not communicate as best we can. And sharing knowledge and our own egos sometimes get in the way. It's like, oh God, I don't need that. I know everything. No, you don't. None of us know everything. We know less every day because we are learning more about what we don't know. And I think that how hopefully people are starting to realise that succession planning is something that needs to happen in organisations, and people who are amazing and offering their knowledge freely need to be accepted and given the time and the space to impart that knowledge. And then it needs to be brought into a central space and utilised in a way, hopefully with like tags and different ways so that you can search for the right information. But that's a collaborative effort.
It's Natalie from the Australian Museums and Galleries Association of WA. I've done quite well to wait to this point to comment on the whole conference sessions. This is a shameless plug, Ian. The advocacy toolkit that Jane King and Alana were speaking about earlier is something that can be used to help you, I don't like to use the term weaponise, but weaponise the risk of that knowledge being lost, and using your voice to advocate through saying, it's here, it's ready to go, we've got the support, we've got it documented, you need to do something with it. And there are some tools that we have within the Every Story Counts toolkit to help you articulate that specifically within the local government.
Adding to that, basically what I was saying about we're not sharing enough knowledge between individual places, there's so much out there, more than we think. And there's so much that's been done by organisations that have a lot more resources than we have. It's about finding and tapping into the people who do have the knowledge and then sharing it with the next person or the person who's next to you. Because just because you have it sitting in that seat, the person sitting in the seat next to you may not have that information. So it's all about sharing knowledge as much as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Georgia. That was a wonderful presentation. A big round of applause for Georgia.